he won't let us take a break. So in the middle of the night, when we're all sleeping, when I'm dreaming about who I'm going to pick in the Super Bowl, but I'll be honest, by last night I had a pretty good idea of it. I think about what our plans are going to be for where we're going to go watch the game and what our Super Bowl foods are going to be, and if we're going to gamble. We're all thinking about that, I'm sure, as we slept and dreamed last night. And in the middle of that, the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, posted a video on Truth Social, and towards, I think, the end of that video, it depicted the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama, and his wife, the former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, photoshopping their faces on apes, on monkeys. And we're obviously not going to show that image. It's on social media. You can see it. So obviously it's blatantly racist. I mean, that I think that should be apparent and obvious to anybody that has eyeballs and any knowledge, any baseline knowledge of the history of Black folks in this country. People have used, Darwin's Origin of Species as like a, to create a hierarchy of where it's like, white Caucasians were at the top of the list, and Black folks or really anybody of color were closer to that of monkeys than they were to Caucasians. We know what the racist trope, how it goes. That goes without saying. And of course, you've had people in his administration, such as the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, come out and say, it was from an internet meme. Stop with the fake outrage. And she said that it was from a full video depicting Trump as the king of the jungle, while Democrats were shown as characters from The Lion King. Now, I don't know if I've said this on the show before, but I'll say it now. Lion King to me is the greatest movie Disney ever made. I love The Lion King. That soundtrack, story. Yes, I am that adult that still cries when Mufasa dies. I'm that guy, okay? I'm going to confess that. Love The Lion King. Seen it a million times. There are no gorillas or apes in The Lion King. Closest to that is Rafiki. He's a mandrill. That was not how Barack and Michelle were, how the Obamas were depicted. Even if it was blatantly racist, but there are no gorillas in The Lion King. Maybe in the background, but no central characters. Caroline Leavitt probably knows that. She has a child. She probably grew up when The Lion King came out. People know that. But there's a number of reasons. There's a central reason why Donald Trump put this out there, but some of the supporting reasons, the ones around it. Number one is, and this administration has a tendency to do this. Remember last year during June, I think it was right at the start of Pride Month, during June, they changed the name of the USS Harvey Milk. It's like, well, that was intentional. That there was planning going into that. For those who don't know, Harvey Milk was a gay rights activist, and he was assassinated, I think, in the 80s. He and the mayor of San Francisco, and they named the ship after him. Well, they changed the name at the start of Pride Month. That was intentional. And as we're in the opening days of Black History Month, he posted that video on social media, which, by the way, the administration says, oh, fake outrage. Why is everybody worried about this or is overreacting? Guess what? If you go to Truth Social, which I do not have a Truth Social account. If you do, whatever. That video is not there anymore. It got deleted. And I think an intern is being blamed for it. Has this administration never heard of the Harry S. Truman phrase? As a matter of fact, it was literally a sign on his desk. The buck stops here. And that's how it is for literally every president in American history. The buck stops at their desk. Get credit when things are going well. Get the blames when things aren't going well. Fair or unfair, that's what the job entails. But the Black History Month component, of course that played. What also is at play, and this has been the case since Obama became president in 2009. So for going 17 years now. Donald Trump is deeply jealous of this man. Deeply jealous. Because you're talking about a Barack Obama. You don't have to agree with all his policies. I'm somebody who is an independent who tends to lean left on most issues, but there are things Barack Obama did. For example, drone strikes, completely against the. I'm not pro-Obama in every single thing that he ever did. I think he did some very good things. I think he did some things that were not good for the country, regardless of your policy. and how you see a Barack Obama. What is objectively true? Good-looking guy, highly intelligent, probably is the most gifted, I think, in the modern era of presidents, which to me would be like Theodore Roosevelt on to now. To me, the most gifted orators to ever occupy that office, FDR, JFK, Reagan, and Barack Obama. Just individuals who knew how to set the tone of what they were trying to, accomplish through. I mean, again, Reagan was literally called the great communicator. FDR had fireside chats. Some of Kennedy's speeches are quoted to this day, including his 1961 inaugural. And Barack Obama, again, we know what he brings to the table when it comes to his speech ability. Somebody who was absolutely beloved by his side of the aisle, has a family, wife that loves him, two very smart, talented, and I imagine a very bright future in his daughters, Malia and Sasha. To this day, I remember when Biden was still in office, when Obama visited the White House, I think it was to see his official presidential portrait be revealed. And it was, I felt a little bit bad for Biden, where it was like everybody flocked to Obama because he was the cool kid coming back to school, right? And Biden was just kind of off in the background. Like there's obviously a charisma component that Barack Obama has that Biden doesn't have, that most politicians in American history don't have. Trump's jealous of that. We saw literally a little less than a year and a half ago at, God rest his soul, at Jimmy Carter's memorial service in late 2024. This was weeks before, or actually, I think it was early 2025. Carter died in late 2024. Donald Trump and Barack Obama happen to be seated next to each other because they're seating the presidents and their wives, and they were just chummy. I mean, like they were buddies from high school. Matter of fact, there was a funny moment where Kamala Harris, who obviously she lost the 24 election to Trump, she turns around. She looks at them talking. Obama stops dead in the conversation, looks straight ahead, and Kamala turns around. Just kind of like exhales, like, you gotta be kidding me. Trump wants to be him so freaking bad. He does. He hates the fact that, yeah, both have been elected twice, but Trump lost an election in the middle. Obama was really the last president to win an absolute landslide of an election, which he did in 2008 over John McCain. 2012 was a little bit closer. Trump lost an election to Joe Biden. Not great. So there's a jealousy component to it. There's a racist component to it. And of course, there's a distraction component onto it, which is really the main factor. Is the fact that when you have in the last week over 3 million files, 3 million documents from the Epstein files that are released, that to put it as mildly as I possibly can, don't exactly paint Donald Trump in glory. Doesn't make him look the best. To say the very least, the fact that he was quite close, it's well documented, with the most notorious pedophile maybe in U.S. history. That when you have a Caitlin Collins from CNN, who to me is arguably the top journalist in the game, I think she is phenomenal, questions him in the Oval Office about, what do you have to say to the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein as it pertains to the newest files that came out. And Donald Trump, interjects, interrupts, and says, you need to, Caitlin, I never see you smile. You need to smile more. And she retorts, this didn't get picked up by some people, but she retorts like, I'm talking about survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, Mr. President. It's not really a smiling matter. He's scared. He is. The fact that, listen, the Supreme Court ruled 2 years ago that is basically any act done under the powers of president is legal. You are immune from criminal prosecution. Anything Donald Trump may or may not have done, this is all, allegedly, he wasn't president when that stuff happened. He wasn't. And I would not, even those that are, even lawyers I've seen on social media that are used to reading some of the worst as it pertains to, sex offenders and what have you, will tell you that when you read, not just as it pertains to Trump per se, but when you read what's being alleged in these emails, it's I don't know how you don't have a pit in your stomach when you're not done reading it, if you can even finish reading it. And that this administration, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, others, Kash Patel, were as secretive as they were, that it took certain Republicans such as Marjorie Taylor Greene literally breaking from her party on this issue, the issue of, hey, let's get justice for the survivors of the most notorious pedophile in American history. Took a vote to even get these files released, which you can say, well, why didn't the Biden administration? That, to me, that is an absolutely fair question. That's a great, I think Kamala Harris was on Jimmy Kimmel's show, was asked a question. She's like, we want to go through the legal process. Okay, you could have made it more of a focal point than you did, in my opinion. This is about as bipartisan as it gets. When you have that, also the added component of, safe to say the administration's immigration enforcement, if you even want to call it that, is not terribly popular with the American people. People being thrown down the streets, protesters being thrown down the streets, tear gassed, confronting people that are peacefully protesting on the streets, killed in the case of Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good, among others, who haven't had their stories told enough. People aren't exactly crazy about that. So, of course, Donald Trump is going to post a video, a racist video, depicting the Obamas as monkeys. Of course he is. That's who he is. It's like back in 2020, during his first administration. COVID numbers, man, they were skyrocketing. They were bad. That was, I think, during the George Floyd protests, and Trump's approval rating was kind of in the gutter. And just out of nowhere, hey, man, this is ridiculous that they're changing the name of the Washington football team. This is an outrage, guys. Who's with me on this one? Brother, we're in a global pandemic. Why are you worried about the name of a professional football team? Why do you care? You're the president. You're the most important man maybe in the world. You got bigger fish to fry, so to speak. This has always been. Steve Bannon, campaign strategist, flood the zone. This has always been the strategy for a decade plus with this guy. When his approval rating is sinking the way it is, with how people are responding to ICE, with the Epstein files being released, a big chunk, over 3 million of them, in which he is heavily implicated, this is his way to get people distracted from that. And I guess the last thing I would say regarding this entire subject, because again, there's folks, and I appreciate that they are, but there's folks that are on social media posting, pictures, like, really great pictures of the Obamas, whether it's Barack and Michelle and their kids, or when they were president, and just the class that came with that family that frankly comes from just about every presidential family in the modern era, with the exception of this guy. Married thrice, kids have illegal business ventures, the whole bit. Is the fact that with all of this being the case, the people that I am most angry with in all of this are not MAGA, but those who are MAGA, and it's a big chunk of the base, but those who are MAGA and simultaneously claim to follow Jesus Christ, as I do, as I'm sure a lot of you out there watching and listening are. I think nobody said it better than one of the greatest writers, if not the greatest writer in American history, Frederick Douglass, said it best. And I quote, "What I have said respecting and against religion, I mean strictly to apply to the slave-holding religion of this land, and with no possible reference to Christianity proper, for between the Christianity of this land and the Christianity of Christ." End quote. In other words, saying there's a difference. There is a difference in Jesus and American Jesus. When you have I think it was the National Prayer Breakfast a couple of days ago, and, Trump goes up there and he's talking about how, I don't see how you could be a Christian and vote Democrat. And you have folks coming up there talking about how, this is just, Trump has done more for Christians than any president in American history. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. What about this man? Name one quality. What about this man represents the one that I believe in my bones, and many others do, to be the God of the universe. What? What about the way that he lives his life in any way, shape, or form reflects that? Like when you have, and I'll be honest, I wasn't going to address this, but it fits in the conversation. Then we'll move on. When you have the halftime show, the Turning Point USA halftime show, who, by the way, they didn't exactly land some A-listers. I thought they'd do better than they did. Jeez. And when it's the All-American halftime show and it's supposed to reflect, as Franklin Graham, son of the late, great Reverend Billy Graham, was talking about how, this halftime show is to reflect the teachings of Jesus, and we're reinforcing Christianity and all this. And shout out to Tim Alberta, who wrote a great book, Kingdom, Power, and Glory. He tweeted, "Yes, like so many Christians who feel besieged by a wicked culture, I'm grateful to Turning Point USA for platform the God-fearing paragon, Kid Rock, who brought us hits like, excuse my language, Balls in Your Mouth, Wax the Booty, and Cadillac, and I'm not going to say the second word. You probably can guess what it is." A guy who has, by the way, lyrics in his songs that strongly reflect pedophilia, underage girls. That's the paragon of Christianity that Turning Point is putting out there. Please, there's a reason that Corey Asbury and Forrest Frank, two fantastic Christian artists, there's a reason they pulled out of the Turning Point USA halftime show when they found out, because they were under the impression, this is just going to be a worship show. Not just. It's going to be a worship show. This is about Jesus and only Jesus. And then they find out, oh, no, there's going to be like a MAGA aspect. Okay, well, this isn't about Jesus then. We're pulling out of this. That is the group of people I think that makes me the angriest. Because while I love doing this show and I love sports, I love doing this, and I love my family and everything, no one I love more than Jesus. Nothing comes first in my life above my faith. It just doesn't. And when you have folks that profess to have those same values, just full-throated support around the most morally depraved president in American history. That pisses me off a lot. So, reason Trump did this is to distract from the Epstein files at the end of the day. He's terrified at people finding out what he allegedly, was a part of in that entire endeavor. And just another opportunity to say, prayers continue to go out to the victims and hoping that they can receive the justice that they so rightly deserve. And shout out to the Obamas too. They don't need, I'm sure they appreciate the outpouring of support from everyone out there. They're pretty accomplished in their right. I don't think they need that reinforcement like this individual in the White House does.
Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.